Hello everyone. My name is Sarah Avery, and I am the Executive Director of Quanta Change. And thank you so much for joining me today. So, today I want to talk about boundaries and why I'm not a fan of setting boundaries. So, you probably know this, maybe you know this, that boundaries are a way, one definition says, of communicating and asserting your personal values, what you need and want, and what's acceptable behavior towards you and around you, asserting that in a way that protects against having those boundaries compromised or violated. So I'm wondering, has that worked for you? Does that work for you? Maybe you're someone who sort of naturally does that, or has learned to do it maybe through therapy or from studying up on what boundaries are and how to set them. And has that worked for you? If it has, you're feeling better, your relationships are working better for you. That is fantastic. You found what works for you. Definitely, when you found what works for you, you should keep doing it. So that is wonderful if that's the case. If that's also the case, you might not resonate so much with what I'm talking about today about boundaries becoming problematic, but you might hear what I'm saying and realize that it sounds a lot like someone around you, someone who's tried to set boundaries maybe, and it's not working at all like it works for you, and you're kind of puzzled about that. So if that's the case, I hope that I can demystify why boundaries work differently for different people for you. So, and I just want to say, I don't think that boundaries in themselves are bad. I think that it's extremely important to know what your needs and wants are, what's acceptable behavior around you, and to have a life in which that's respected. So, for the past 22 years in guiding people through the Quanta Change process, I have seen ways in which that becomes problematic for some people. And so today I'm going to go through a couple of those big ways that I see setting boundaries becoming problematic for them. And I'll outline those, and then I'll also share how natural boundaries can be set in a way for you, and how much better that works for the people for whom setting boundaries has worked badly for some reason. So the first way that I see in people, and I will say that my guess is you're probably not going to resonate with both of these, but you might resonate with one or the other. But the first way I see it not working is people who have typically not set many boundaries. If this is you, maybe you've kind of dug back into your past and you know that this comes from a place of not being allowed to set boundaries as a child, having parents who said no to that, who said, it's not about you, it's not about what you want or need, it's about what I think and what I want you to do, and just do that and don't listen to yourself. And I'm wondering if that resonates for you. So this is how I grew up in a lot of ways, and so I can really relate. And maybe you learned about boundaries, thought, wow, that sounds like a good idea. Like, I'm not feeling like what I need and want is being respected well, and I think I need to set some boundaries. And have you tried that? Have you learned how to do it, kind of planned it out, built up some courage, maybe a lot of courage, and said to someone, okay, this is what I need. This is my boundary in some way. Or maybe you've only done that once you've really felt so sort of run over that you're angry and you've had enough and you can't take it anymore, and it feels terrifying to say what you want and need, but you're beyond the point of terror. It's, you have to say it. So in either of those cases, has that worked well for you? If so, that's great. Or have you tried to set the boundary and said what's okay for you or not, and then had that not work? Either you were ignored, or people paid lip service and then never followed through on it, or perhaps even worse, maybe you were ridiculed or attacked in some other way. Is that your experience? That's the experience of lots and lots of clients that I've had over the years, and I see it out there in the world a lot. So, if that's the case, it's not your fault. You did not, you were not wrong in how you tried to set the boundary. It's not because you didn't work hard enough at it or plan it out well enough or say the right things or say them in the right way. It's because people treat you, I'm going to say something really ungrammatical here. People treat you how you feel about being yourself, not on the basis of what you say or do. So people are treating you, kind of reading how you feel on an automatic level, and then they're treating you in that way that you feel. So you can layer on top of that, okay, I feel like I don't deserve to, it's not safe to ask for what I want and need. I don't deserve to do that. But on top of it, I just need to have some respect in my life for myself. And so I need to say this. The problem there is that people are still reading how you feel underneath, which you cannot change through rational level means by saying or doing something different. So they're still reading you don't matter. You don't get to say what you want. You don't get to do that. And the way it is for you is to be quiet and not even maybe know what you need, much less say it. And so hush up. Like you don't get to do this. You don't get to set boundaries. And they communicate that in some way. So does that sound familiar? So if that's you, I totally hear that. I'm going to describe the other way in which boundaries become problematic, and then I'm going to come back to what the remedy is, because there is a way to change that, to be able to communicate your needs and have that respected. So just hang on a second. So let's talk also about the other way that I see boundaries becoming problematic for people. So this is really different. This is someone who has probably pretty naturally set a lot of boundaries in their life over time, and said, this is what's okay for me. This is what's safe. This is what's okay to happen around me. And if this is you, you're probably not afraid to say that or otherwise enforce it in some way. Maybe it's that you've set up the conditions of your life in a certain way that keep the boundaries up, keep maybe people who feel not safe for you at arm's length. And that's worked pretty well for you. But that setting up of things or enforcing really strong boundaries is something that I often refer to as living inside a fortress. You're living inside these thick granite walls deep inside the fortress to keep yourself safe, okay? And I'm wondering if any of that is ringing a bell. Does this sound like you? And if so, are you thinking, yeah, what's wrong with that? Are you saying there's a problem with this? So if that's working for you and you feel great and your relationships are working great and everything in your life is working great, no, it's not a problem, and that's great. But have you started to feel more over time like there's something not right? Maybe it's that you're having a harder time making or keeping friendships. Maybe it's you're having a harder time with your boundaries being heard. It feels like more and more people are running over your boundaries. Maybe you're finding that something in your professional life isn't working because somehow you're not being seen or heard. These are all ways that I see this sort of strong boundary kind of person start to experience problems with those boundaries. And here's the problem. It's because the most fundamental need we have as human beings is to matter, to be seen, to be heard. But if you're inside the fortress, everyone else in the world is out across the drawbridge and in that meadow way over there. And how are they going to see or hear you? Even if you're screaming to be heard, maybe they can't hear you because you're inside the fortress. So if this is you, we're going to talk in a second about what the remedy is. So two very different kinds of people, right, that I've described, and maybe there's some way in which you resonate with both, but maybe you resonate more with one than the other. And so the second type, though, I have a question. So I wonder if you've tried to connect with others, and if you're finding that that's worked, or if you're feeling like, oh wow, screaming from inside the fortress, that sounds familiar. Yeah, that's again because changing your behavior doesn't actually change this deep feeling level that people are responding to us from. So that's what we're going to talk about now, about how to really address that. So the Quanta Change process, this work that I do, was developed to address this. So let's talk about why I could be saying these two different kinds of people and these two different kinds of problems could actually have the same remedy. And it's because they both come from your survival mechanism of dealing with learned distress. Okay, let me explain all that jargon that I just threw at you. So learned distress is the Quanta Change term for the feeling that you absorbed very early in life, that there's something wrong with you being just the way that you are. And as you absorb learned distress, your sense of self develops a survival mechanism that allows you to just kind of deal with life, to keep moving forward despite the fact that you're storing this icky feeling that there's something wrong with you. And your survival mechanism is something that's formed, sort of like molded around your parents and other early caregivers. It's how you fit really well with them. So in these two different cases, maybe the way you fit well with them, if you're the first type, is to not voice your needs at all and just cater to other people, make sure they're happy, make sure they have what they need, but it's not about you. Maybe if you're the second type, it's that for whatever reason around those people, you needed to make strong boundaries in order to keep yourself safe. And that can happen in lots of ways from lots of different kinds of parents and early caregivers. So you've got this learned distress and this survival mechanism that were molded around your early caregivers. And so I'm wondering if that starts to make sense. If you're saying, oh, that's why I keep behaving in the same ways. That's why I keep feeling the same way I have. And that's right. If so, here's the thing about learned distress and the survival mechanism that goes along with it. They cannot be changed or removed in the case of learned distress and its survival mechanism by rational means. That's because your sense of self is not accessible to rational level change. It's like there's a wall of resistance or a wall of protection around your sense of self that protects it from thinking your way out of your learned distress and your survival mechanism. So I wonder if that rings a bell. If you've tried to think your way out of these icky negative feelings or patterns that you've been experiencing, and you just feel like you're beating your head against a wall. I remember that feeling very, very well. So the great thing is, like I said, Quanta Change was actually developed to deal with this problem of not being able to access your sense of self and change how you feel at a really deep feeling level through rational means. So it does that by working with your brain during sleep. And there are two reasons for that. The first is that sleep is when your sense of self, how you store, the container that stores how you feel about being yourself, is getting recharged. And sleep is also when your rational brain is entirely shut down. And that wall of resistance to change is shut down with your rational brain. So by working with your brain during sleep, what you get to do is tell your brain that you want to recharge with your core natural well-being, the feeling at your center that you are all good, just being yourself, instead of recharging with learned distress. And as you do that, Your brain permanently removes layers of learned stress. Your natural well-being expands to take the place that learned stress was sitting, and you feel better and things work better for you. And when we're talking about this whole thing of boundaries and people treating you how you feel, the more you feel good being yourself, the more you feel like you matter being yourself, that you deserve and get to have what you need and want and deserve to have a life in which you're respected, the more you feel that way, the more other people automatically treat you that way. So that's what Quanta Change is about. I want to give you a couple of examples of what that looks like. So the first one is a client kind of in that same vein of the first type, where she hadn't really been able to set boundaries for herself. She hadn't been able to really say what she wanted and needed. She had to sort of just go along to keep everybody else happy. And she at the time had 2 teenage boys whose survival mechanisms had been molded around her, around that survival mechanism of hers, that no, I don't need anything. You don't have to respect me. You don't have to respect boundaries. It's okay. I'm just here to take care of you. What do you think her teenage boys were saying to her when she said, I really want you to do X, Y, and Z? Were they saying, oh, okay, Mom, that's what you're saying. That's what you need. Okay, I'll do that. No, you can imagine. They were teenage boys, first of all, and teenagers naturally push against boundaries. But they had also been molded partially around her survival mechanism of not setting boundaries, of not getting what she needed, not being respected. And I'm wondering if you can relate to this. It's hard. It's really hard, especially if you have kids and they're growing up and you feel like you need to be a good parent. And to be a good parent, you need to set boundaries in some way. And yet you try to do that and it's not working. So if that resonates in any way, so here's was going on for my client. She was trying, they were in their teenage years, and it was really rough. And she started unlearning layers of this feeling that she didn't matter and that it wasn't safe for her to communicate her boundaries, to ask for what she needed. And as she did, 2 things happened. One is that it actually got easier for her to speak up for what she wanted, and she was getting a different response when she did. And that's a big thing I think I see a lot with Quanta Change, where it's not just that you're able to speak up, but that you're getting a different response from people, because again, people treat you how you feel. And so as you feel different, they can respond to you differently. Instead of pushing back, instead of saying, who do you think you are to ask for something? You don't get to ask for anything. The response is, well, of course, that's what you need. Of course, I can say yes to that. And so she started to see that with her boys. One, in that she could ask for what she needed, and she was more often getting a better response from them. And 2, that some things that she had been, parents, all about this, asking for years from them, all of a sudden, without even asking again, sometimes they were following through on those things. And again, these are teenage boys. So if you can relate, I hope that you're feeling a bit hopeful that things really can change in setting boundaries around your kids, maybe around a different difficult family member. So it's really possible. So let me give you another example of the second kind of person, the very strongly boundaried person, the inside the fortress kind of person. So this client came to me. She had been out of work. She had left a job that wasn't right for her. She'd gained a lot of job training, and so she was eligible for a much better job than she'd had before. She was excited about doing that work, and she'd been in that job search for, I think, almost 2 years at this point that we started working together, and nothing was happening. She was your dream employee. She was super smart. She was incredibly competent. She had all this extra training. She's personable. She's everything you want in a client. And she was interviewing. Nothing was working. So can you see how that could be a function of being inside the fortress, of being hidden, of being invisible, of not trying to be seen and yet not getting seen. Is this familiar to you? It's frustrating, right? And she was also seeing it in terms of relationships. She'd actually moved to a new city where her family was, her mom was, and she was really having a hard time connecting and making new friends. And she was really frustrated and sad about that, and feeling pretty lonely. So this is kind of what was happening when she came to me. And so she started unlearning layers of this learned distress and the survival mechanism that says I have to keep these strong walls up around me. And she'd been seeing the negative consequences of those strong walls for a long time, but it didn't feel safe to take them down, and she couldn't figure out how to take them down. So as she started to do that on both fronts, on the friend front, she started to find groups to connect with, and she started to find people she was really enjoying hanging out with and making friends with, and that felt very different than it ever had in her life. She said felt more open and easy, and like she just got to be herself, and she was finding people who felt like a right fit for her friend wise. And then on the job front, she got a new job. She found this job in which she just started thriving, and she said that she wasn't hitting the same kinds of walls that she'd hit in previous jobs, where all of a sudden she would hit a place where something there wasn't right for her, wasn't safe, wasn't right, and she would have to leave the job. She was saying, this job, wow, it's just everything's great, it's going well, and I'm not hitting those same kinds of walls that I've hit before, where I felt like I just had to leave because things weren't right. So that's another example. If you're the kind of strong boundary inside the fortress person, and that started to feel like it's bringing you negative consequences, that really, I have absolutely seen that change. And I'll just say here that it may sound really scary to say you're going to be taking down these walls. But what I've found, what my clients with this kind of pattern tell me, is that as those walls come down, it does feel safe. And they're kind of surprised by that, but it feels safe and it feels good. And they get to more openly be themselves in the world in a way that feels easy and good and safe. So if you resonate with either of these, or if you're thinking, well, I don't have any of this, I don't think boundaries aren't my problem, but I think there might be something else that's going on that's a negative pattern for me. I want to see maybe if this Quanta Change sleep thing could help me. The first thing that you need to do is find out which one of these patterns of learned distress plus its survival mechanism you have. So there are 6 of these patterns. They're called the idealist, the perfectionist, the optimist, the caregiver, the defeatist, and the dictator or benevolent dictator. And so the reason for finding out which of these patterns you have is not to, just dig further into the problem, understand the problem better, maybe dig into your childhood more to understand where all this comes from. It's to actually see what you're going to be unlearning through the Quanta Change process. It's to find out what your brain is going to peel off layers of during sleep so that you can feel better, so that your life can work better, so that you can have your needs and wants and desires respected. So in order to do that, you're going to go to my website and take a scientifically validated, in-depth personality test. This measures learned distress in your survival mechanism, and I'm going to graph it for you and send you a free report that outlines your learned distress and survival mechanism and how Quanta Change really can help you start to unlearn layers of that so you can feel better, and the ways in which you might start to feel better. So if that sounds intriguing to you, I really hope that you'll go to my website, Quanta Change, Quanta change.com, and click on the free report button. Take the test and I will send you your free report. So I hope that you're understanding more about why I'm not a fan of setting boundaries today, what I think can work better, what natural boundaries set by your well-being can actually feel like, and how they can work so much better. And I hope that you will join me again next week for another way in which Quanta Change really can help you feel good being you. Thank you.